expected points, clean sheet odds, and who is the best captain. This video has got all of the information you need to know ahead of Game Week 24. Alright, so we're going to go through the top players for expected points by position. Starting off, we've got the goalkeepers. And before I get into the players themselves, all of this expected points data comes courtesy of Fantasy Football Hub. And using my link in the description, you can sign up to Fantasy Football Hub with 30% off and a 30-day free trial. You can only get that using the link in the description below. So if you like this kind of data and feel like it would be useful for using for your own team in FPL, then feel free to sign up using the link. All right, advert over, goalkeepers. It's no surprise, and you're probably going to see this across most of the positions. But when you look at the expected points, this is just for Game Week 24 in isolation. You've got Alisson and Pickford, the top two, right? They've both got double game weeks, so it makes sense that they're the top two. Alisson's got Everton, well, Bournemouth away first, Everton away second. Pickford's got Leicester at home and Liverpool at home in the double, right? Makes sense. Both of these guys are top. Third place is Nick Pope, followed by David Raya, Walton, the Ipswich goalkeeper, Sanchez of Chelsea, who he's been pretty woeful recently, hasn't he? I would not be surprised to see him drop now as the Chelsea keeper. And Sells, who again, I don't think he'll get dropped, but I don't think he had a very good game against Bournemouth at all. So if he, strings together another couple of poor performances, even he could be out the team. But that's probably a bit hasty. I think he definitely plays against Brighton. And there's always a chance that Forest, in my mind, keep a clean sheet. I do think that Bournemouth game was a little bit of an anomaly. So when you look over the next 5 weeks, again, it's not going to be a massive surprise to see the next 5 weeks dominated by the players that have double game weeks, right? And especially the goalkeepers, because I would say Alisson and Pickford, you'd expect them to be amongst the top goalkeepers, even if they didn't have a double game week. So they're already good options. It's just though that they play 6 games in the 5 game weeks as opposed to the others who all have 5, right? You got Alisson and Pickford as the top 2, David Raya, Sanchez, Martinez, Flecken, and Dean Henderson rounding off the list. So these are your top goalkeepers across the next 5 game weeks. Again, I go back to Sanchez. I'm not personally sure how much longer he's going to be in that Chelsea starting 11 for. Let me know in the comments if you think Sanchez is actually even going to start the next game, to be honest. And just a general comment on goalkeepers as well. I didn't say this when going through Game Week 24 in isolation, but if I was to pick one of two, Pickford and Becker, one of the two, or Alisson, sorry, I'd probably go for Pickford, Alisson, he takes up a third, you're not going to have Alisson as your top 2 Liverpool options, right? He takes up that third Liverpool spot, first of all. And also, I think long term, I think he's a little bit injury prone nowadays. I don't know how you guys feel about Alisson, but over the last couple of seasons, he has just picked up a fair few injuries. And I think it's only a matter of time before he gets another one. I'm never wish an injury on a player. I'm not suggesting that, but just with the record and the way he's gone over the last couple of years, he does appear to be a bit more injury prone. Whereas Pickford, I think under David Moyes, I guess Everton are probably, well, they did just keep a clean sheet against Brighton, to be fair. But I'd say under Sean Dyche, they were definitely defensive first. And I'd always back Pickford as one of the top goalkeepers under Sean Dyche. I'd say defensively under Moyes, they'll fall off a little bit. Not because they've gotten worse, just because he's going to try and get them actually trying to score goals. But he's always going to be there or thereabouts, I think, Pickford is one of the top keepers. Everton are a team that I do feel will keep some clean sheets. And Pickford always seems to get saves bonus in every game that he plays. And he also is pretty good for saving penalties too. And I think for me, long term at least, that propels him ahead of Alisson. So whilst Alisson is there for expected points, my personal opinion, I think Pickford might actually be better. All right, on to the defenders again. And then for Game Week 24 in isolation, the list is entirely dominated by Liverpool and Everton players, right? But when you're looking at Game Week 24 in isolation, you want a true view of who the top players for expected points are. And I don't think you're going to be surprised to see it's the players that have 2 games in the game week, right? The expected starting Liverpool back 4, Trent, Virgil van Dijk, Konate are 1, 2 and 3. And then Robertson in 4th, who I would probably put as the 4th best Liverpool defender because I'm not entirely sure his minutes are secure enough to fully back him to play both games of the double, particularly considering, they just he hasn't been all that good this season, I don't think. And his time in that Liverpool team, I think, is kind of running out. And also, I know, well, they're top of the list, right? But that Bournemouth away game, with the form that Bournemouth are on, beat Newcastle. It was 4-1, I think, wasn't it, at St James's Park? A place where teams very rarely go and win. And they've just beaten Nottingham Forest, who are statistically one of the best teams in the league for defensive-wise. You know, I think they've kept 9 clean sheets this season, which is equal with Liverpool. They beat them 5-0. So they didn't just beat them, they absolutely smashed them. And one of the 2 double game week games for Liverpool is Bournemouth. Do they keep a clean sheet against Bournemouth? Probably not. And against Everton, you know, that kind of Merseyside derby vibe, it's going to be a bit needly, a bit cagey. They could well concede in that game. So whilst, you know, the Liverpool defenders are towards the top, and I obviously agree with that, you know, they're good players, a good defence, got 2 games, it makes sense. They're not the easiest games. And then Everton with Liverpool and Leicester, again, like I said, I think Pickford's probably pickable because even if they don't keep clean sheets, he gets saves bonus. But the Everton defenders, I'm really not sure. I don't think I'd go Tarkowski or Branthwaite. Mykolenko, just because he's fullback and probably a bit more attacking than the other 2, is the one I'd really go for. But yeah, even these Liverpool guys, I'd be surprised if they kept clean sheets. Well, certainly against Bournemouth. Everton might be more possible. But yeah, that Bournemouth game for Liverpool, defensive-wise, is looking really tough. All right, over the next 5 weeks, it's no real surprise to see the list dominated by Liverpool players. All 4 of those top Liverpool players are here. Interestingly, Trevor Chalobah is on the list as well. That's quite interesting to see from Chelsea. I think that might be sort of stolen from the fact he used to play for Crystal Palace, and maybe that's affected his expected points. Anyway, he's a little surprise inclusion in the top next defenders for the next 5. Gabriel's up there as well. So despite all 4 Liverpool players appearing here, Gabriel is actually ahead of Virgil van Dijk, Konate and Robertson. And I'd probably say that's fair enough. You know, you think of the attacking threat he poses from set pieces. I said this in my buy and avoid video I made on Saturday evening. I genuinely still would back the Arsenal defence to keep clean sheets. And, you know, Gabriel is the most attacking of those Arsenal defenders. So he's obviously going to be up there. And I'd say his attacking threat, plus I still edge the Arsenal defence just ahead of the Liverpool one, personally. So I think that probably explains why he's ahead of Van Dijk, Konate and Robertson. Other player of note in there is Munoz of Crystal Palace. Got an assist in game week 23. Finally got an attacking return. So, you know, holders and owners will feel pretty relieved that he finally cracked away with an attacking return. The next 5 for Crystal Palace are really good. As we all know, the guy is basically playing as a winger, so looks to be a pretty decent option. And then again, Trevor Chalobah, interesting inclusion on that top defenders list. So what I thought I'd do next is we've just looked at the top defenders regardless of price, but I think it's also worth looking at the cheap defenders because we're not all going to be able to fill our team with premium defenders, are we? So Munoz and Chalobah are the top 2, no real surprise there. We got Luca Dean in 3rd place, who, if he was nailed on for Aston Villa, I'd suggest he's a pretty good option, but I don't know. I just have a sneaking feeling he could share minutes with Martson. Mitchell and Gahey, 2 other Crystal Palace defenders up there as well. I think that might be why Chalobah's up there because he's mistakenly still as a Crystal Palace player in the algorithm. Matty Cash is up there as well. I'd actually say, comparing him and Luca Dean, I'd probably put Matty Cash ahead just because I think his minutes are a bit more secure. He probably doesn't offer the attacking threat that Luca Dean does. So Luca Dean's crossing and sort of free kick taking from crossing positions is on a different level. But yeah, Cash's minutes is there. And Howson of Bournemouth is up there as well. One player you don't see is Kirkes of Bournemouth. The fixtures for Bournemouth after Game Week 24 when they play Liverpool really turn and start to look really good. And I would put Kirkes up there alongside Howson as well as one of the top defenders in the game. So I'd probably, to be honest, if this was my list, I think I'd replace Chalobah with Kirkes. All right, then on to the midfield. And again, no real surprise to see just for Game Week 23 or 24, sorry, in isolation. The list is dominated by players with a double game week, with the inclusion of Cole Palmer. So you've got Salah, Diaz, Szoboszlai, McAllister, Gravenberch, and Lindstrom of Everton, who I think is probably the only midfielder that offers any attacking threat that could start the 2 games. But yeah, quite honestly, outside of Mo Salah for me, I probably wouldn't own any of the other midfielders with a double game week, apart from maybe Szoboszlai, just at his price. I don't think you can pick Diaz because I don't think his minutes are secure enough to justify the price tag. And I certainly wouldn't want to own Luis Diaz long term. Whereas Szoboszlai, with the kind of advanced positions that he's taken up, his price tag being just over 6 million, you could probably justify getting him in for the double. And his minutes are more secure than Luis Diaz. I would say he probably starts both games of the double, right? Cole Palmer is in 3rd place, despite not having a double game week. West Ham at home is obviously a good fixture for him. Hasn't done all that well in recent Premier League games, but he's Cole Palmer. He can in some games he can just absolutely turn it on and destroy a team, and he could well do that, as we all know, against West Ham. Lindstrom, McAllister, Gravenberch, despite them all having a double game week, and I guess a player that does have a double game week, as long as they start and play good minutes, or at least the 60 minutes, they're going to get you about 4 points, which is, I guess, is the equivalent of like another midfielder almost getting an assist. So that's probably why they're propelled quite high in terms of expected points compared to the others. But really, would you really want to pick Lindstrom, McAllister and Gravenberch? Not for me. So with that in mind, it probably makes sense to look at the next 5 game weeks. And of course, no surprise to see Salah at the top there. With his double in 24, he's got 6 games over the next 5 weeks. And he is the best midfielder in the game, right? He's, I think, by far and away the best captain. But we'll get on to who else is a captain option next week as well. Cole Palmer's up there in second place, despite only having, well, I say only having 5 games in 5 weeks. Doesn't have the double, but he's still in second place. Diaz in third. Ahmad is the 4th best midfielder for expected points. At the time that I'm recording this video, Man United have not played yet. So I can't draw any conclusions from how he got on in Game Week 23. But even the games leading up to this, despite him bailing Man United out on a couple of occasions now, I still wouldn't have him as my 4th best midfielder. I do quite like Phil Foden, to be fair. He's been in exceptional form recently, to be fair to him. And I think with the fixtures he's got coming up being pretty tough, there is justification, I think, to be sort of put off him. And those that have bought him so far can reap the rewards. And I would say he's probably a player that I wouldn't buy and wouldn't sell. I think if you got him, keep hold of him with the form that he's in. But it's really hard to justify buying him with the fixtures he's got. Bryan Mbeumo, I personally bought him ahead of Game Week 23. The penalty debacle against Crystal Palace is absolutely mental. If you haven't seen it yet, Bryan Mbeumo missed a penalty, hit the post against Crystal Palace, but it was deemed that 1 or 2, I think it was a couple of the Crystal Palace players, were inside the penalty box before Mbeumo struck the penalty. So it got retaken for encroachment and he scored the retake. So yeah, pretty jammy, to be honest, as a new Bryan Mbeumo owner, but I'll certainly take it. He's obviously a good option. The Brentford fixtures get really good. As he proved in Game Week 23, he doesn't even need to have that good of a game to score goals because he's on penalties. And it's the same for Bruno Fernandes, right? Both of these guys for me just tick all the boxes I like to see from FPL assets. Penalties, 90 minutes, set pieces, talisman for their teams. They're really good FPL options. I had a few people, to be fair, I'm rambling on a little bit about these midfielders, but I had a few people in my live streams that I've done in Game Week, well, ahead of Game Week 24, suggesting that maybe is Bruno Fernandes a sell for Bryan Mbeumo? And on paper, I think this might be a problem that some people have. On paper, I think Mbeumo is a better option, but if I had Bruno Fernandes, I probably wouldn't make the switch between the two. I'm only saying that because it's a common question I've had in some of my streams, and people watching this might have the same question. All right, so similar to what we did with the defenders, we've got a view of the cheap midfielders. So I've done a filter of 7 million and below. And for me, there's 1 or 2 key players missing from here, which I'll talk about once I've gone through the list. Ahmad, number 1, given where he was in terms of midfielders overall. Madueke looks pretty decent, I guess, for Chelsea, although I'm not sure his minutes are totally secure. Szoboszlai with the 6 games over the next 5 and his good performance against Ipswich. Goal and assist, of course, in Game Week 23. Eze, who did all right in Game Week 23, to be fair. Semenyo, again, did all right in Game Week 23. Bournemouth looking absolutely ridiculous at the moment. However, there's no Kluivert and there's no Ouattara on this list. And Ouattara, I think, after his hat-trick against Nottingham Forest, he's probably going to play for Bournemouth. Probably as their centre-forward. And then you got Kluivert, who I think is the best Bournemouth midfielder in the game. You know, he's probably slightly better now than, well, maybe not Ouattara as such, but definitely better than Semenyo from open play. And he has penalties. So for me, the bottom 3 would be Semenyo, Kluivert, and Ouattara. I'd probably not even consider Trossard just with his minutes. I think that algorithm has given him those points should he play decent minutes, but I'm not sure his minutes are going to be that secure. And Ismaila Sarr, I don't know, I feel like he's gone through, we didn't really even have a purple patch, did he? But I feel like he's gone through his patch of being a pickable asset now, and I'm kind of a little bit put off by him. I think there are lots of cheap midfielders in the game that are better. I'm also recording this ahead of the Aston Villa game, and I personally think Rodgers should be on this list as well. I think there are so many sub-6 million midfielders you can pick from. The 3 Bournemouth ones, Ahmad and Rodgers right now are probably my standouts. A quick counter through the forwards then, and a similar concept to what we've seen from the defenders and midfielders. Obviously for Game Week 24 in isolation, you'd expect the top players in some of these positions to be the ones with a double. I think with Gakpo and Ndai being sort of standout players for their respective teams, you'd expect to see them amongst the top players on this list, right, for Game Week 24, and it's no surprise. Ndai, Gakpo, first and third respectively, with Isak in between the two. Isak with Fulham at home. To be honest, I think that's a pretty good fixture for Newcastle. Despite Anthony Robinson's fantastic returns of recent, they're about to play Man United as well, Fulham, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them keep a clean sheet in that game. But I personally don't think they're all that good defensively, Fulham. That's my opinion. I do think Isak will do well in that game. Gakpo, I think, is probably the second or third best Liverpool option, of course, alongside Mo Salah. And Everton and Bournemouth away, he's probably going to get some goals in those games. I think Liverpool are going to do all right from an attacking perspective in that game. It's just how many goals Bournemouth can put past Liverpool and just how resolute Everton can be. And Ndai with DCL, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, pulling his hamstring. He's obviously not on this list. And Ndai took the penalty for Everton against Brighton, scored it, did the seagull celebration, got the yellow card. So if Calvert-Lewin's out, it could be him on penalties, and I think he's the outstanding Everton attacking asset at that point, isn't he? He's a good price, 5.4 million. Liverpool and Leicester obviously being the two games of his double. That Liverpool game, it's not quite a write-off, particularly considering it's at Goodison Park, but I wouldn't expect returns from that one. And then Leicester, that is a good game alongside the Liverpool one. So there are potential returns there, to be fair. Haaland's got Arsenal away. I really do think if you haven't sold Haaland at this point, with the double game week for Liverpool and Everton coming up, I do think there is genuine justification to get rid of him now. You know, the fixtures turn for Man City. He's not got a goal and assist, I know, but he's not performing at a level at the moment or consistently enough where you'd want to captain him. And I think when you're spending so much money on a player and you're not captaining, it's just a waste of time, to be honest. Wisser's got Tottenham at home. Given how they've just performed against Leicester, I think that's one of the best fixtures you could possibly ask for. He's looking really good, has done all season for Brentford, so he could be a really nice option. I personally am not a big fan of Kai Havertz. Man City at home, though, given how poorly Man City have defended recently with Kuzanov and Mateus Nunes playing right back, he could do all right in that game, I guess. And then Chris Wood, Brighton at home. On the face of it, but we all know the Gandhi quote, and Chris Wood is the early kickoff. So just something to bear in mind if you're superstitious there. In terms of the next 5 game weeks, Isak is actually the number one forward. It kind of levels out in terms of expected points over the next 5, with Gakpo, despite his double, being third. Haaland second, Watkins fourth, obviously behind Gakpo in third. Wisser, Kai Havertz and Mateta are your top forwards for the next 5 weeks. All right, then, a quick look at clean sheet odds, and I kind of had to break this up a little bit. These are courtesy of 11ify, one of my best or most favourite tools for projecting fantasy football or football outcomes in general. What we got here is the clean sheet odds for each team. Bearing in mind, of course, Liverpool and Everton have a double game week. So on the right, we've got the Liverpool and Everton clean sheet odds when they face each other. And on the left, we've got the clean sheet odds when Everton play Leicester and Liverpool play Bournemouth. So just bear that in mind when you're looking through them. So Everton have got 42% clean sheet odds against Leicester, 15% against Liverpool. Arsenal 36, Chelsea 33, Ipswich 31, Newcastle 31, Man United 30, Forest 29, Aston Villa 28, Liverpool 27 against Bournemouth, 41 against Everton, 27% against Bournemouth feels a little bit high to me. And then I'm probably not going to talk about the rest of the teams, to be honest, because for me, anything below 30%, I probably wouldn't back a team to keep a clean sheet or start defenders. And yeah, you can see all the teams there below 30%. So there's a quick look at some clean sheet odds. In terms of the captaincy, well, I think this is a pretty easy and quick one, to be honest. I could analyse this till the cows come home, but genuinely, I think Salah's a great option. You can't look past Salah as captain. I think of all of those Liverpool forwards, he's the most guaranteed for minutes. I think every man and their dog is going to captain Mo Salah for Game Week 24, and I think you'd be a bit silly not to. The only question is, do you triple captain him this week? I think if you still have the triple captain in hand, just use it. For me, I'm not going to get too deep about it. I personally, my gut feel, I go with my gut sometimes when using chips, and I think this is probably my best and honest explanation of it. I've never really had all that much luck with the triple captaincy chip. I don't know about you guys, but it's never really paid off. And I think of all the chips, it might actually be the weakest. So when you've got an opportunity like this week that's clear-cut, Salah the outstanding option, I just use it on him. I really would just use it on him. People who have used it already, for example, on Haaland when he either had Southampton and got 1 goal, or Ipswich when he got a hat-trick, you stand a chance here to claim back some ground when Salah's got 2 teams who you could certainly conceive him being able to score against. yeah, I wouldn't think about it and just use it, because otherwise that chip could be a right pain in your backside when you're thinking about using it later in the season. And just get it done, in my opinion. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, found it useful. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments if there's any players that I missed out on, or if you disagree with any of my opinions. I haven't said this recently, but it's something I wholeheartedly believe in. You know, FPL is all about different opinions. If everyone had the same opinion, all of our teams would be the same and the game would be really boring. So I really don't mind if you disagree with me. Just be polite about it in the comments. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like rating. If you haven't already and want to stick around to see more content from me, you can subscribe to the Golden Goal channel. It should be just there on your screen. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in my next video.